Most people think retirement is freedom. For a lot of people, it's the first time something quietly breaks. Imagine waking up at 6:15 in the morning. Your heart is already racing. Before your eyes are even fully open, your hand reaches for your phone out of pure reflex. You're scanning for that one urgent email, the Slack notification, or the fire you need to put out before breakfast. But the screen is blank. There is no work. You've been retired for 2 months. Your mind knows that, but your nervous system, it hasn't gotten the memo. It has run for 35 years on one command: get up, get moving, stay useful. The body doesn't just take a day off from that, not after decades. There's a name for this. It's called corporate PTSD. It is that low-grade alertness that used to mean emails to answer or a meeting to prep for, and somehow that feels worse than being buried in obligations. It feels like you're supposed to be somewhere, and you can't remember where. You've stepped off the high-speed train, but your legs still expect the ground to be moving. The silence doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like you're forgetting something important. Most people think retirement is a money problem. It's not. Money solves scarcity. It doesn't solve structure, and structure is what was holding your life together. Think about your old calendar. For 30 years, it was doing something quiet but powerful. It was making decisions for you. 8 a.m. meeting, noon lunch, 3 p.m. call, 5:30 p.m. commute home. You didn't have to figure out what the day meant. The structure told you. Inside that structure, you always knew where you stood. Busy meant valuable, scheduled meant purposeful, moving meant you were doing it right. Then retirement comes and the calendar goes blank. Not just lighter, blank. The first thing a lot of people feel isn't relief. It's a low hum of anxiety that doesn't have a name yet. For 40 years, empty time was something you fixed. You filled it because that was the responsible thing to do. Now, you're sitting with a cup of tea at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. The light is coming in, nothing is on fire. By any reasonable measure, it's a good moment. But in your head, there's a voice. Decent, responsible people are grinding right now. What exactly are you doing? That voice isn't weakness, it's a reflex. It is decades of conditioning that tied your worth to your output. Most people never recover from this moment because they don't dismantle that reflex. They just redirect it. They start filling the days back up, not with things they actually want, but with things that feel productive enough to quiet the guilt. One woman chose to spend her first retired weekends simply doing nothing, just rest. Her own sister mocked her for it, called her lazy, called her selfish. That's the social pressure running underneath all of this. We spend 30 years being defined by email notifications and constant deadlines. We accept it like a form of Stockholm syndrome, where we fall in love with the employer owning our time. That notification ping becomes a burglar robbing you of your peace. When the noise stops, it's disorienting. Your mind is so used to being tense while having breakfast or exercising. When it stops, it feels like a phantom limb of the corporate world is still twitching. You feel like you're forgetting something, but you aren't. But here's what nobody expects. When structure disappears, the brain experiences something close to low-grade withdrawal. Routine creates predictability, and predictability creates safety. Without it, your nervous system keeps scanning for what it's missing. This is where the identity shock hits. Think about the mirror at your front door. Many of us have one, so we can take one last look at ourselves before scooting out to work. You'd look yourself in the eye and say, "You got this today. You're going to lead some good meetings and you're going to be great." But now, you look in that same mirror and ask, who are you now that you're not the CEO, the teacher, or the doctor? You're staring at a person who is on vacation for the rest of their life. And that mirror can reflect regret, anxiety, and confusion. Someone at a dinner party leans over and asks, "So, what do you do?" For the first time in 35 years, you don't have a clean answer. The shorthand, the title, the company, the role is gone. You realize how much of your identity was quietly living inside your job description. You stop being that guy. You have to take off the senior leader mask. That loss of status hits harder than most people expect. Your social circle starts to thin. Most work friendships are built on proximity and shared context, not genuine connection. You were in the same building, struggling with the same people and the same challenges. You didn't choose each other, circumstance did. When that circumstance ends, the relationships go up in smoke. There's no flame, they just disappear because the glue holding you together is gone. Your former colleagues are still inside the machine. You stepped out. There was a VP who spent 30 years in senior leadership. His phone never stopped with requests, updates, and decisions. People needed him. 6 months after he retired, his longest conversation of the day was 3 minutes with the guy at the grocery store. He wasn't mourning the salary. He was mourning the status, the feeling of being needed, of mattering to the forward motion of something larger than himself. And here is why this matters. Social isolation in retirement isn't just uncomfortable, not emotionally, physically. Research out of Harvard's study of adult development has found that social isolation in later life carries health consequences comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The identity crisis and the isolation aren't soft problems. They have hard downstream costs. Most people don't sit with that discomfort. They try to fix it. And this is where the financial trap is set. They get busy to have an answer when someone asks what they've been up to. I've seen people take on part-time work they actively disliked, not for the money, but for the structure. They just needed a reason to get dressed and somewhere to be at 9 a.m. I've watched grandparents volunteer for full-time childcare they never actually agreed to, just because saying yes felt easier than admitting they needed time for themselves. 18 months later, they are exhausted and resentful because they are still just being useful to someone else. But the version that does the most damage is the spending. Imagine a 62-year-old man who did everything reasonably right. He saved consistently and retired with a solid portfolio. But 8 months in, the restlessness got loud. He bought a boat. Not because he had a passion for the water, but because a boat was something to talk about at dinner parties. It filled the blank space where his career used to be. It was a hobby that announced itself, so he didn't have to explain the void. Then came the golf club membership and the unplanned upgrades. Researchers call this boredom spending. And the dangerous part, it doesn't feel like a mistake when you're doing it. Let's look at the math in 2026. According to research, Americans believe they need $1,460,000 to retire comfortably, but the actual median savings for those aged 55 to 64 is just $537,560. That gap is already significant. If emotional restlessness drives you to spend just an extra $50 a day on impulse purchases, coffee runs, and club memberships, that adds up to $18,000 a year. That's not lifestyle, that's leakage. In a 2026 inflation environment running at 2.8%, that unplanned drain doesn't just cost you $18,000, it costs you the compound growth that money would have generated. Run that out 10 years, and you're looking at real asset depletion before you even reach 75. Manufacturing a sense of purpose with your portfolio is a dollar that stops working for you. You don't get to undo that mistake at 78. Now, if your brain still wants a scoreboard, give it a better one. Your brain, specifically the part that likes to figure things out and spot the gaps, didn't clock out on your last day. It just doesn't have a game to play anymore. The years between 60 and 65 aren't the finish line. They are the window where the most consequential decisions happen. In 2026, the Secure 2.0 Act introduced a tool called the Super Catch-Up. If you are between 60 and 63 and still working, your standard 401k limit is $24,500. But the Super Catch-Up allows you to contribute an additional $11,250. That brings your total annual personal contribution ceiling to $35,750. Every dollar you push into that account reduces your taxable income today or grows tax sheltered for tomorrow. But here's the detail that requires your attention in 2026. If your prior year income exceeded $150,000, the IRS now requires those catch-up dollars to go into a Roth 401k. That means after-tax dollars. Getting that wrong doesn't just cost you a penalty, it costs you the strategic advantage you were trying to capture. Run the math on maximizing that for just 3 years. At a 6% return, that extra money compounded over 20 years becomes a figure genuinely worth discussing with your heirs. This is the new leaderboard. It delivers a win that belongs entirely to your family. No manager to impress, no performance review, just a smarter number on the other side of a decision you made because you understood the rules better than most. But while you're optimizing your money, don't forget that health is the real currency of retirement. None of it matters anymore if you don't have your health. If you have all the money and freedom in the world, but you don't have your health, those things lose their value. We often focus on lifespan, but the real goal is health span, the quality of life in your final 10 years. Think about it. 100 years ago, life expectancy was 45. Today, it's 80. Lifespan is increasing, but is your health span? Money will not buy you out of a deep-seated sickness. You have to own your wellness. Start with the doctor, get an assessment, and build a plan to get healthier. You have to replace imposed urgency with self-directed urgency. Work gave you urgency as a drug. It was addictive and created focus. When the deadlines go away, you can feel untethered. This is the incredible lightness of being where you can get lost. The goal isn't to eliminate stress. That's impossible. The goal is to trade bad stressors for good ones. Bad stress is someone else's agenda. Good stress is chosen stress. Building a life can be stressful. Being a good husband or father can be stressful. But that stress has your name on it. It is responsibility you actually want. Every single thing that stresses you out should be connected to something that genuinely matters to you. You have to be willing to be a beginner again. Think of the woman who was an accountant her whole life. When she retired, she didn't want to look at another number. She didn't want to do a nonprofit's finances. She applied to be a golf cart driver at a movie studio. She liked film and just wanted to drive stars from one cabin to another. She wasn't afraid to fail because in retirement, failure is just an opportunity to try something else. You don't have a boss to fire you anymore. This is also how you build your legacy. Legacy isn't just about the money you leave in a will, it's about how you live. It can be as small as a jar of honey. One mother sends her daughters a specific bottle of Manuka honey from New Zealand every month. To her daughters, it's a hug every morning in their tea. That intentional kindness, that is legacy too. It's about the examples you set for your children and grandchildren. Retirement is not an exit. That framing is incomplete. It is a structural redesign. The quietness isn't the problem. The quiet is the point. It is the space you earned so you can finally hear yourself think and build an identity that belongs to you. Everything that retires with you, the meetings, the performance reviews, the titles, none of that was the real you anyway. It was just the scaffolding. And scaffolding is supposed to come down when the building is finished. What's left is the part worth keeping. There will be afternoons where you sit down and feel completely useless, where the voice comes back and tells you that a person of value would be doing something right now. Learn to let that pass without arguing with it. Learn how to sit in the quiet without grading yourself. A morning with no alarm, an afternoon with no agenda. That isn't laziness. That is the return on your investment. You didn't retire from work, you retired from structure. And if you don't rebuild it, something else will. Because the hardest part of retirement isn't money, it's realizing that structure was doing more for you than you thought.